Welcome to Conversations for the Amazon We Want. My name is Soraya, and in this episode, I'm talking to Verginia Wortel, an expert in sustainable forest management, forest policy, and climate-resilient ecosystems, head of the Forest Management Department at Celos in Suriname, and member and author of the Science Panel for the Amazon. In this conversation, we will dive into Verginia's background and career and the uniqueness and importance of the Amazon in Suriname. Hello everyone! Welcome to another episode of Conversations for the Amazon We Want. My name is Jhagroe and I'm a sustainability advocate from Suriname. I'm passionate about building more just, sustainable, and equitable futures that climate resilience is about, especially in the Amazon and the Caribbean. My work centers around the intersection of energy and environment, and I have had the opportunity to explore ways we can shape systems that work for both people and the planet. My background is in sustainable management of natural resources. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Verginia Wortel, who has been a researcher at Suriname's Center for Agricultural Research since 2007 and currently heads the Forest Management Department. With a background in environmental management and conservation biology, she is mainly interested in the ecology of forest ecosystems. By understanding the functioning of forest ecosystems and their responses to changing environmental and social conditions, she believes responsible management systems can be developed for the protection and sustainable use of forests. She works closely with Suriname's Forest Authority on policy development for sustainable forest management. She leads management of one of the world's oldest silvicultural experiments in Cabo, West Suriname, contributing to global research on forest dynamics and supporting national forest governance. Her interests include blue carbon ecosystems and enhancing community resilience through equitable climate finance. She actively promotes using research to inform policy. Verginia, welcome and thank you for being with us here today.
Wow, thank you for this for the nice introduction and for inviting me here to talk about the Amazon.
Thank you, Verginia. I will ask you some questions and I hope we can have a wonderful and great conversation. To start us off, could you tell us a bit more about your journey? What inspired you to become a scientist and what drew you specifically to environmental research and forest management?
I guess it started back home. I come from what you can consider a rural area. My family has this agricultural land right along the Suriname River, and it was part of the plantation, Adrichem, and we grew many crops, different kinds of crops. And the first thing I remember, my introduction to how wonderful plants actually are and the value they have is when he told me one day, Verginia, chew on this leaf. It was from a plant, a family, I think it's family of a ginger species. It's called, the local name is sangrafu. And I chew on it and it had this very sour taste. And he kept saying, keep chewing, you don't have to swallow, just chew it. And it will make you strong. So that was my first introduction. And the second time was I would often get sick when I was little, and there was this elderly guy. We knew him as Oom Nel or Uncle Nel, he would say in English, and he would prepare this medicine for me to help alleviate this cough that I used to have, and that was my second time. In terms of the profession itself, I guess when you grow up in Suriname, in most families, if you would ask the kids or ask them what do you want to become, and the common things you would hear is to become a doctor, an analyst, a teacher, or a lawyer, and there was nothing about being a scientist. And for me, is I made up my mind to become a dentist just because my eldest sister, she was a dental assistant, and I didn't know what else to become. I said, okay, and she pushed me in that direction. Okay, I'll become a dentist, and preparations were being made to go to the Netherlands. But then in high school, in my final year, the University of Suriname came to the high school, Lyceum 2, and they informed the students what possibilities there were, career possibilities. And there was this an instructor, chemistry, Mrs. Weesehage, and she introduced environmental science. And I didn't know, because I know that I had an affinity for the environment, clean environment, nature, etc. But I didn't know that you could have a profession in that section, in that area. So when I heard about that opportunity or that possibility, and I decided, okay, I'll be staying in Suriname and take my career in this. The work that I do today, at first I was mostly interested in aquatic ecosystems, and mainly in fish and diversity and what they mean in an aquatic ecosystem, and what impacts it. At that time, small-scale gold mining was something that started happening in Suriname, and one of the important things that came around was the impacts of gold mining on your aquatic ecosystems. And we know how important water is for all life, you can say. So that was something that interested me. And later on at CELAS, in my early career there, I met up with a professor, Professor Putz from the University of Florida. And he would jokingly say, and he introduced me actually to sustainable forest management, the importance of trees and forests. And he said, in Verginia, evolution already happened, get out of the water. And so that's how I decided, I deviated from aquatic ecology to forest ecology.
Great, very important, or well, wonderful to see how your journey started. Because in Suriname, we actually say, and that's something in Dutch, but I will translate. Je hebt het met een paplepel ingegoten gehad, right?
Right.
So you get it right after birth. It's something that gets with you from childhood, and you just grow up with it. So it's really very wonderful to see that you went through so many. Such a wonderful pathway, and that what you mentioned about the bitterness of medicines, I really remember that if you get medicines in Suriname from plants or medicinal herbs, it's very bitter, but you're sure that it's gonna help you go through it, right? Oh, okay, wonderful. So moving on to the next questions, you were mentioning about the aquatic research and gold mining. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you're currently working on, your current work?
So at CELAS, there are two major research areas. You have the agricultural part and the forestry part. So I had the forest management department at the present, and our main focus is sustainable forest management. We manage one of the oldest silvicultural experiments in the world, and it's in West Suriname. It was established in 1978, and the purpose of that research was to see how can we harvest trees in a sustainable manner and get the maximum out of the forest without degrading the forest or being to have a negative impact on the surrounding forest. What we do now is we have this experiment, and data has been collected through the years. So we have about 7 census, you can say, about these experiments. And what we're trying to do now is do the data analysis and help form policy. What we have in Suriname is you have the Forestry Service, SBB, and they monitor and control logging in Suriname. And it's not that we don't have an act, we have a Forestry Act with all these procedures, what to do and what not to do with our forests. And we have this code of practice. The code of practice is based on on the results that we have. One thing that what I can say is that the experiment helped create the SALOS management system. The SALOS management system is a sustainable forest management system. And one of the things, for example, is the length of the cutting cycle should be 25 years. And that is taken up in the Forest Act or in the Code of Practice. But we need to see if that's true. Cutting cycle 25 years means every 25 years you can go back to the same place and do your logging activities. But what we've seen the experiment was established in 1978, so we're now about 40 plus years. So the 25 years has already passed. So is it true that the forest has recovered after 25 years or not? Should we should we increase the cutting cycle? So these are some of the data analysis that we're trying to do, looking at forest growth. Of course, with climate change that we feel right now, one of the things, and the commitments that Suriname has internationally, and we're thinking about UNFCCC, we're thinking about the biodiversity, international biodiversity agreement that we have. So we have some obligations, not only nationally but internationally, and things that internationally people would want to know is, okay, how much carbon is stored in our forest. So these are some of the analysis that I'm working on now, together with the team at SALOS. Another thing I mentioned, aquatic ecosystems. So we're also interested in blue carbon ecosystems and mainly in mangrove forests. So I'm not really out of the water yet, so it's a compensation. For that, the majority of our population lives along the coast of Suriname. So it's inevitable that we need to know what we have in our coast. Why are mangroves so important? That the ecosystem services that these mangroves delivers to us as people. How can we sustainably manage them? How can we sustainably harvest fish? Anything from honey to fish to agriculture. All these things needs to happen in such a way, in a responsible way, that we can continue using these ecosystems. And so these are some of the research that we're doing now.
So just out of curiosity, you were mentioning something about the management system at SALOS. Mm-hmm. So the project has been ended, and then now you have that validation phase that comes in. Is that it? Like the data analysis, and now you have the validation?
Something like that. So the SALOS management system was developed in the 80s. But it was never fully implemented in Suriname, just because the policy at that time, and still at this day, doesn't match with what the system requires. This system was adapted, for example, in Brazil and other countries, and they improved that system they made it their own and improved it in another sustainable system. But with us, it stayed at that level. So what we're trying to do is evaluate if that system is still applicable for Suriname situation at this moment, and how can we improve it or adjust it, because technology doesn't and science doesn't stay still. We need to see how we can improve that.
Wonderful to see how that has evolved and how it also has a connection with the other countries like Brazil you were mentioning. Okay, so you have been working at SALOS since 2007. It's
been a long time.
Yeah, almost 20 years. So looking back, how have your experiences shaped your perspective on science, policy, and community, especially in Suriname?
Well, and what I've noticed, so when you just graduate from the university, you're very excited to give yourself to the work that you believe in. And one thing that you notice that science without community, you won't reach much, or you won't achieve much. You need people to help translate what you found into policy, and then need the people to implement what you've found out. So science for science is, I believe, is not valuable. At SALOS, what we do is applied scientific research, and that means we try to understand the system, and then if we notice real life or actual problems that communities face, we use that information to help develop sustainable management systems to solve that problem. So that's what applied scientific research means. So and trying to what we've noticed. So the first time we did science, we collected data, etc. But then we noticed, okay, at least what I noticed is that what's missing is the translation of the scientific research into such a language that everyone, the general public, can understand. That's one point, but also the government can understand and how they can implement that in their policy development. So I think it needs to be something together. It has to be a cohesive thing, so science, policy, and community.
Correct. I also believe that it's always like more co-creating things, and I'm very happy that you're part of that and you're able to guide that through. Okay, so we have talked about your background and how you're there, so we'll now move on to a little bit more about science and conservation in the Amazon. And I would like to know, Suriname is one of the most forested countries in the world. We're proud of that, definitely. But many people outside the region don't know much about it. So what makes Suriname's forest and its approach to conservation unique or important, according to you, on the global stage?
I guess, Suriname was, I think, one of the first countries that started implementing or establishing nature reserves. So we have this Nature Conservation Act, I believe it's from 1952, and early on, Suriname, the government at that time, decided we need to have a zoning plan. What will we conserve? What can we use for economic activities? So one of the things, I believe that was even after World War II, when they decided to develop the logging industry to set up a forestry belt. That's how can I say this? From north to south, it's right below what we consider the savanna belt. It's a lowland tropical forest, and that's called the forestry belt where logging activities take place. So that's designated for that. And another part is designated what we know the greenstone belt for mining activities. So that's what I think helped for us that we see 93% forest cover for Suriname. That is one of the things, but I think we should take care because if you look at the map that the Forestry Service published, you would see logging concessions right near or even right in one of our largest or one of the, I think it's the largest nature reserve, the Central Nature Reserve Suriname. And you would see that the concession even overlaps. So we need to take care and monitor this closely, that we don't, and I say you have to practice what you preach. If you say and you have these commitments, then you should see it also on the ground.
Yeah, very important. We need to maintain that status that we have at the global stage, definitely. And what do you see then as the biggest challenges and knowledge gaps in conserving the Amazon in Suriname? And what solutions do you think are most needed to address them? So just in general, but also if you want to go more specific, that's also.
Greatest challenge, I think, is workforce in science. I always make this joke with my colleagues that say we're talking about how do you say bedreiging in English. What is
The threats?
Yes.
The
So
threats.
the biggest threat, I guess, for biodiversity, I say we are one of a threatened species. Also, scientists in Suriname because there are not many of them.
Yeah.
I can say that that's one of the things. And if you look at our education system, the university, there is a lack of students who wants to do science and forestry, and it is still a bit unclear what the causes are for that. Because I remember colleagues from abroad came to Suriname and they were so surprised, and they say, a 93% cover, and I would expect to see a whole battery of what you say scientists in forest, in ecology and biology, and no, for many subjects or specialized areas there is one person only. One experience I had is that I did this project on blue carbon research, and due to family obligations I had to back out. But because there's no one else to fill in my place, that project needed to be extended. So it's something that is not good. You need to have someone or multiple people to fill in the gap if someone falls out. So that is one of the things. So that is one of the challenges, how to motivate students to choose science and nature science, biology, anything related to forests, and also the illegal activities that we have. It is not only in Suriname, it is not a problem that Suriname only faces. I believe it's the whole Amazon. Suriname has many acts, we have the laws, but it's the enforcement that is lacking or needs some improvement. Even in our field stations, we deal with illegal logging sometimes, and if that doesn't change, it's gonna be a bit sad to lose certain experiments. The lot of research that we've done will be lost. So I believe as a challenge, it's workforce, illegal activities, and solutions. I think the only thing I can come up with is educate. We have to educate people. If I look at the gaps, knowledge gaps, because there are so little scientists in Suriname, not a lot has been done in terms of research. Just simply, for example, the government, the ministry asked us on some advice on certain tree species, if it should come on the CITES species list. But we could not give that advice because we don't have the research. The research hasn't been done on that specific tree species. So these are simple things, but it needs to be done. And I believe there should be more collaboration between the different ministries, the Ministry of Education and Science, Ministry of what's called now Gas and Oil, I believe, and Environment.
Gas and Environment, yes.
We have these collaborations with SBB, with the Forest Service, so that's going well. But I think where there is a barrier, you can say, is we give the advice, we do the research, but then it has to go to the government to implement or to develop policy, and that's where it gets stuck often. So I think you need to have people who can negotiate also, because we are the scientists, but you also need other parts. So we need to have different areas of experts who can lobby for you to push certain laws and that it can take place. So everybody has to have a part to get things, to get things done.
Yeah, correct. I think it's about the collaboration. You mentioned
Exactly.
the cohesion, workforce capacity building. That's a lot of things that we probably can improve on our work. And what you mentioned about that, we, the students, for example, or the motivation. I think we should not, when you have a lot of something, you take things for granted. Maybe that's something what plays a role in Suriname. But I think and I hope that it improves, and I'm sure that with all of the researches, and you mentioned in your brief with the introduction, you mentioned that you went to like kind of a fair where you could get information.
Mm-hmm.
I think if those things come up and people go to it,
Mm-hmm.
and we've now placed, because with the climate challenge that we have in the world now, it's important that these studies or areas get more to the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember for sustainable management of natural resources, for example, where I was a student, that student which you were a supervisor of and where I got the opportunity to meet you, she was the one and only doing something with forest, right? So I'm happy that you're very committed to all of this, and because sometimes people, as you mentioned, you're the only one heading that department. Some of those people do not are not always ready to supervise students and those kind of things. So thank you for that and your contribution in all of that. Okay, what message would you share with young people, especially those in Suriname or across the Amazon who want to get involved, maybe in science or protecting the environment?
I guess I would say we are part of a unique ecosystem, and it needs conservation. It needs to be conserved. Not one thing is a student of mine also mentioned, and it stayed with me. And she said, "We are dependent on the Amazon, and not vice versa. The Amazon does not need us. We need the Amazon. So, if we want to preserve this unique ecosystem, we'll need help. We'll need students. We'll need information. We'll need science." To help the Amazon, actually, because the Amazon in the recent years has been degraded, and a lot of deforestation has also taken place. And I believe that people miss, it's what you mentioned also, if you have a lot of it, you don't value it, and when it's gone, then you miss it. So before that takes place, let's try to keep it together, and I would say try to stay curious and ask questions, and take your time, because I had a group of students in the beginning of this year where we taught them about forest research methods, and they went into the forest without even standing still. Take a moment just to breathe it in, to take it in from, okay, that's a tree. If that tree could talk, what kind of stories would that tree tell me? So things like that, and it's ours, and it's our responsibility, I would say.
True, and you mentioned something, and I want to have a question on that. If the Amazon could speak, what do you think it would say then? And what do you think the region thinks about the work we are doing to preserve it?
Geez. Okay. I feel a bit embarrassed if the Amazon would be a person and see, okay, how we treat the Amazon as a person. I don't think that we would like to be treated that way if we were two people talking. So I would say there are not many of us who value the Amazon, but there are people, and we will try our best to keep the Amazon as it is.
Yeah, wonderful message. Thank you for
you.
that. So, Verginia, if we talk about inspirations, etc., for new generations, if you could go back in time and talk to your 20-year-old Verginia, what would your advice be to her?
My gosh, 20 years old. What did I do at that time? I believe, I just started the university, and one thing I would say is not to put too much pressure on yourself. Things will work out. the way it should work out. You had just one thing I am grateful for in these years. There was always when I faced a problem or anything, there would always be someone there to help me without me knowing. So leading to this day, for example, if thinking about the questions that you may ask me, and I was thinking back and I said, wait a second, every single time that something happened, there was always someone. So things have a way of working out. Don't worry. Because I notice also with some of the students, they are so anxious and sometimes depressed and anxious about getting things. They want to do things so perfectly. It's fine if you fail once. It only makes you stronger, I always say, and it just helps you grow as a person. I would say just live your life. You've only one life, so no problem is big enough. It will always work out.
Right, we will overcome, right? That's what I always thought too. It's just that, it's a process. And when you're young, I'm always trying to plan things and get things done because we have such a high level that is expected and the peer pressure, but also our role models or, people who have achieved a lot of things and we also want to be there. But it's a process, and I think as you grow older, maybe that's something that gets into
I guess it comes with experience. Don't worry about it. It will come.
Right, it will come throughout the years. But at some point, you're then not youth anymore and not young anymore.
No. So that's what I'm saying. And you just there are moments where so one thing that I always say to myself, never to regret anything. And maybe I would do things differently, but regrets never, because that's my decision. I thought things through and I said, okay, I will go this way, or I will treat this issue like this. So, and even if I would do things differently, I would not regret it. So that's one thing that I would always say, never to regret any decision that you make, because one way or another, you will reach where you need to be. So,
true. It's as I think, it's a process, and you will get through it with lessons and everything in between. And it's also like part of life, right? So, if you could maybe tell us about a fun or interesting experience you had in the field, that in the Amazon or in the forest or something related, if you could.
I don't know if it's kind of fun, but
or an interesting one. It's also good.
Well, the longest expedition you can say that I experienced was in the Coroni swamp. It is one of the largest freshwater swamps in Suriname, and we were there for almost 2 weeks. And one experience that I had, my responsibility was water quality and fish diversity. So one of the things that we needed to do, we need to use what we call a net to scoop up the fish. So 2 people, one on my side and you, and we would scoop across the, how do you say that?
The ground, just across the ground. Yeah.
Yes, the aquatic bed, and you would scoop and you would collect the fish. And someone from a game warden was also with us. We were with an airboat, and we went into the swamp, and dark water is what we're used to. You jump in and you start collecting. And suddenly the game warden yelled, "Oh, there's a caiman here." And I said, "Where, here?" He said, "Yes, here." I said, "Okay, then if he's there, we're going there." So we moved and we did the same thing, and he yelled, "Oh, there's a caiman here." And I thought to myself, what is this? Are we in the middle of caimans? And then, and I didn't see anything, and he said, "Okay, let's move here." And we did it. Suddenly, this huge caiman, in my perception, I think it was 3 meters long, but I think it should be shorter. But for me, at that point, just because he jumped up right in front of me, and I stood frozen in the Caroni swamp for maybe 15 minutes, and the airboat was maybe half a kilometer farther from us. So we had to yell for the airboat to come back to pick us up. Someone had to lift me on the airboat. That's how frozen I was. It helped, and I would say for the longest time I was a bit afraid to going in black water because I don't see what's underneath since then. But I overcame that fear just with experience, I can say. But that was one of the. Still to this day, when we come together with the field technicians and other researchers, we talk about that period of what happened to us. And every time that came and became longer. It was first 1.5 meters. Now I think it's 5 meters long every time. But you know how, and sometimes when you tell stories, exaggeration takes place.
Yes, correct. I'm glad you're still here with me and that you're not part of his story. You also mentioned that lots of things, and we can see that it has a very close link and that everything is interconnected. And I think for us in Suriname, it's very important that we preserve all of that, we co-create things, we work together, and definitely for us as youth and the generation that is about to come, that we maybe not only look at opportunities and the challenges, because forest it's like a lot. The Amazon is something that's really dear to us, but we also can make an effort to, create an interest in all of that, and we do not take that for granted. So thank you, Verginia, for all of the wonderful stories you shared today and the inspirations and everything. I really appreciate it, and I think for all of the messages that you gave to as inspirations for young people, it's also that I can say that for forest management and things that have to do to conserve our Amazon, I think you're really a role model in the space, and that we can always reach out to you for advice and guide us through research or whatever it should be. Thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. I just hope with the science panel of the Amazon that it not only stays between you and me, but we can promote the organization in Suriname, and that more people get interested in and participate in it. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who is listening to us for participating in this episode. We invite you to follow us on social media and stay tuned for future episodes. Together, we will continue building the Amazon we want. This podcast is an initiative of the Youth Advisory Committee of the Science Panel for the Amazon. The Science Panel for the Amazon benefits from the generous support of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, and the World Bank, with financial support from the Global Environment Facility. The Youth Advisory Committee is especially grateful